Hi, welcome to the BD Roundtable. We're here today with John Chisholm to talk about why law firms should be embracing pricing strategies that aren't relying on time, but based on outputs and results to clients. If you want to join upcoming calls like this and participate in the roundtable sessions, head on over to bdroundtable.com to sign up to become a member. When you do, you get access to our private Slack group community where you can ask questions and get feedback from peers like yourself. Now, here's John. All right, John, thanks so much for joining us today. The whole issue of moving away from the billable hour into more client-centric value-based pricing is something that's been top of my mind. Now, you're a three-generation lawyer, right? So you've been born, raised, steeped, and molded into the traditional sort of old school law firm billing pricing. How did you find yourself consulting on this topic?
Well, yeah, thanks very much for having me, Will. It's terrific to be part of this, and I love the concept of what you've set up here. So I am a third generation lawyer, or was. I call myself a recovering lawyer now, but I was managing partner of a firm that my father and grandfather were partners of, and I became managing partner there. I think perhaps because I was actually shy at filling out timesheets, but as managing partner, I could make everyone else in the firm fill out timesheets. But I am old enough to remember a time before the billable hour. In fact, I was one of the young Turk partners that had to go to my father and some of the older partners and say, hey, look, we've got to change our billing model to have hourly rates. And well, actually didn't say it was a billing model. We said it was a management model. So we've got to catch out all those lawyers who were slacking off. And it was probably the second biggest lie I ever told my father in my life. And so within 2 weeks of sort of having hourly rates, we moved into billing our clients by time. Yeah, and now I'm going to sound like a reformed smoker because after doing it for 20 or so years, I've come to realise that there's a better way of valuing our services as professionals rather than by time.
That's right. And there's been a lot written about the billable hour and why it's dying a very slow death. But there still are some law firms who are holding on to it with all, a full grasp. So for those who are kind of new to this discussion and this issue, what are some of the key issues that's wrong with the billable hour? Because you hear lawyers say, "Oh, it's very equitable. It's very clear. You can see exactly where time is being spent." But
well, yeah. Look, and I guess I have to say, and that I'm embarrassed that now in the third decade of the 21st century, we're actually still having this discussion or debate about the billable hour when it's a 20th century model that may have, and I'm not saying it doesn't make money for firms, but I think it's a suboptimal business model, and there's better models around. And look, the main, I suppose, the problem with the billable hour is it focuses everything on inputs, Will, instead of what our clients really buy. And I think what our clients really buy is outputs and outcomes. Even though we may bill them by 6-minute increments or whatever, that's not what our clients come to us for. I think also in some firms more than others, but it encourages a production and utilisation mentality instead of a spirit of proactivity and collaboration and innovation, and it penalises increased expertise and operational improvements that deliver faster work. I mean, I'm amazed with firms saying we're investing in technology because we'll get things done quicker, and yet still in the billable hour model, that's just dumb. They're going to get rewarded less. But I think the main reason is that we say in our profession we hire the smartest and most creative law graduates, yet we make them account, and I did, make them account for every 6 minutes of their day. And it's just so demeaning, I think, to really good lawyers, really good professionals, that anything we do, any value we create is just measured solely by time. So, and it looks for value in the wrong place. So they're the main reasons. And there's a whole heap of others. There's a LinkedIn post I recently did why the billable hour deserves to die, but it's still hanging in there, let me tell you.
Well, I'll link to all of the articles that you've written on it. Quite insightful. One thing that I do always find very intriguing is you can have an expert lawyer who spent years and years and years coming up with their, building their expertise, and they can give a client a response in a matter of minutes, where you have some new lawyer who has to take time to find the response, and they get to charge more. That seems a bit
that's why I say it's really demeaning to, and for, I've been working in this space for 12, nearly 15 years now, and I see, and I make pricing mistakes too. So do most firms, even under the billable hour model. We call it write-offs. But for the good lawyers, for good law firms, most of the pricing mistakes I see is they're leaving value on the table. They're undervaluing their services, underpricing. And I know we cop it in the neck because hourly rates and overbilling and all that sort of stuff. That's part of the production mentality. But when value really counts, I think for many good law firms, because of the way we bill, we leave value on the table, and we have to leave. Clients come to us to make a profit out of using our services. So we have to, allow the clients to make some profit out of using our services. So don't get me wrong. But I think if we can, charge high prices, and we're only going to charge high prices if a client perceives they're getting much greater benefits and value. But I see it time and time again where because they perceive the market says we've got to meet the market or whatever, and we leave incredible value on the table.
That's right. Now, you've advised lots of law firms in transition away beyond the billable hour to client-centric pricing models. So let's say there's a firm who wants to explore this issue. They're not going to drop the billable hour model overnight, right? So how can we as the BD marketing teams kind of raise this topic, help law firms think about this issue and start this?
Yeah. So I guess when I first got into this, when I became a consultant, was asked what my hourly rate was. I go, I don't know. And as I've written about and spoken about before, for the first few jobs I did as a consultant for law firms, I just said, look, I'll do the work. Pay me what you think I'm worth at the end of the projects. And quite frankly, I was getting paid more than what I would have priced my own services as if I was pushed. But back in those days, there was some, not many law firms, but there wasn't a lot about value-based pricing or pricing up front. There is in other industries. Other industries, we don't hesitate. We pay the price of something. We may argy-barge, or argue about it or what have you. But in the professional services area, there wasn't a lot. Now there is just so much information out there. Google value-based pricing or that. So I would encourage anyone starting off, firstly, read. My pricing mentor, a guy called Ron Baker, who I think is the world expert in value-based pricing in professional firms. He's written several books, one called Implementing Value Pricing, I think is sort of the Bible, if you like, of value pricing in professional firms. But, there's a whole increasing community out there. Speak to firms that have done it, made the transition. There is a lot more information out there first. So I'd sort of say, read. But I think also to understand, you're right. Most firms, particularly larger firms, are not going to do away with recording time or the billable hour straight away. So it's about taking, small steps with some of the larger firms we work with. We do pilot programs, maybe starting with new clients or with, particular practice group or something. But I have to say, even if you didn't do that, and sadly, even if you're still billing by the hour or have to do fixed fees or give estimates, a mantra that many firms have now is no one in a firm can price their own work. And I say that for a reason that when we price our own work, we tend to undervalue our own value. There's a reason authors and actors have agents, not because they want to give away 15 or 20% of their gross, but because those agents can talk up the value of their clients, of their customers. And if you have someone else that you have to talk to about what you're going to price this, I can almost guarantee you'll come up with a higher price. And even if you don't come up with a higher price, it gives... I'm as brave as a lion, Will, pricing your work. Why? Because I don't have to face your client. But if we talk about, what you're going to do, what the value, what's the client like, are they price sensitive, what are they worth, I could give you more confidence to be able to hold the line, if you like, or price your services to your client.
So let's say a lawyer gets in a RFP from a client, the BD manager is asked to help prepare, it's purely based on billable hours. What can we say to that lawyer to maybe question or, raise the topic of, hey, is there another way we could bill this or price this? Like, how can we have that conversation? What would you recommend we say?
Yeah, look, RFPs, again, take this for what it, but I think dysfunctional selling habits vis-a-vis the billable hour beget dysfunctional buying habits, RFPs. And I know you can't always do it, but when you're asked for the billable hour, what are your hourly rates? I work with firms that just don't have hourly rates, and they just say, no, we don't have hourly rates. We don't record our time, therefore, but this is what we can do. We'll price everything we do for you up front. As marketing people, I think if you had a genuine slogan that you were able to say to your clients or the world at large, you will never, ever receive a bill from our firm that you have not pre-authorized. I think that's a fantastic marketing opportunity. I mean, you have to back it up. So, I think one of the obstacles, I'll just be frank about this with the assistance that BD can give, is if the lawyers are compensated or measured and rewarded by the time they spend on something, that's a problem. That's a problem. So you have to get, I think you've got to get an internal champion or leader or whatever, or the firm on board to, to understand that time's not everything. But to make value-based pricing or any sort of pricing really successful, I think we have to change our compensation models in many of the firms, which sadly just still, is time. But having said that, you can work with clients. If it's an RFP for, say, get on a panel, rather than a distinct, matter, if you like, I mean, being able to say to the, potential client, look, give us a go. We will sit down with you, scope the work, price everything up front. If it goes out of scope, materially goes out of scope, we'll sit down and we'll, agree another price or where the scope's going. So I think...
John, I mean, oftentimes we'll get in like 4 or 5 RFPs a day, and then the lawyers want to pump these out. So are we realistically expecting the lawyers to sit down with the clients and talk? Okay, this is how, the expression that pricing is done with the client, not to the client.
Yeah,
that's clear. But practically, how are big corporate law firms going to do that?
well, they are doing it, agreed, not in all areas. I mean, we work with some large firms that's just in some areas of practice, and there's a couple of things, and I'm not do 5 RFPs a day. I don't know, what's your success rate on that? Do you take if I get 1 out of 5, I'm doing all right. So maybe we have to be a bit more selective about the type of work that we take on. I mean, and I know that's hard because in what I call the old law business model that leverages people by hours by hourly rate, or people by time by hourly rate, the mantra is I've never met a billable hour I don't like yet. So I'm going to go for any sort of work. Now I'm being a bit naughty about that, but you know what I mean.
There's a grain of truth in there, sure.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that as marketers, I hope pricing, let me say, has much more to do with marketing and business development than it has to do with finance or accounting. The most successful pricing professionals in the world don't come from or don't report to the finance department or accounts or whatever. They come out of sales or marketing. Accountants, finance understand. What's that saying? The cost of everything and the value of nothing. So, working with the marketing people on what's the value that we can create, hopefully at a higher price, and then let the finance people sort of work on what's the internal machinations. And there's also a lot of, helping your lawyers to ask, appropriate questions of the clients. Yep, we say it's a value conversation. I think, and I know this from experience, it is so hard for any professional firm to really explain the value they're providing in an RFP. And I don't mean to be demeaning about this, but I look at a lot of RFPs from clients' perspective, and I got to say, they pretty much look all the same.
Well, that's that. We've had multiple calls about that.
So what if you could put in something that says, we are different, so it makes it hard for the potential clients to compare apples with apples. If I put in an hourly rate, it's easy to compare. But if I make it hard, if I say, no, we are so different, so special, we will price everything up front, it just makes it so much harder, I think, for potential clients to compare.
Yeah, no, I mean that's certainly right. Now you mentioned we could do some pilot programs. So let's say we find this internal champion who's really doing this. We do a pilot program. What are some challenges that we're likely to face? You mentioned on one of your previous podcasts that you're going to fail forward, right? You're going to make mistakes. So what can we expect as we venture into this value?
Yeah. So, and again, I'm not trying to, but the more you do this, and the more confident and competent you become in pricing, the less mistakes you will make. But you will always make mistakes, and I think we have to be prepared to make. And I make some mistakes. I go, why did I price it like that, and I finish up doing so much work? Okay, but then hopefully I learn from that. I don't know what some of the viewers may have, but I think the greatest learning tool that any professional firm, particularly any law firm, can have is what I call after-action review. And that is particularly on big matters. How did we go? Did we price it right? Did the client think we got great value? Are we going to get repeat work? Could have we done things differently? It comes from the US military. It's not a blame game or anything, but the better firms do these after action reviews, or reviews in the middle of a project or what have you. So yeah, you know, we will fail. So there's no perfect price. I mean, we've been locked into the billable hour for I don't know how many decades now. Still, people are pretty shy at filling out timesheets. Timesheets, by their very nature, are inaccurate and non-transparent. So it's just a furphy that it gives an accurate indication of time. It does not. It just can't, because we're human beings. We forget to put down time. We make up time. You know, all those sorts of things. So it's just a general indication of time. We tend to put down, you know, what we think the time was spent. So I think you never get the pricing exactly right, but we can learn from both the successes and the thing about after action reviews. If you've done a great job, created fantastic value to the client, make sure the whole firm knows that, or at least your area if you're doing it on a pilot program. And
Right.
yeah, so.
Yeah. Now, have you seen? I'm sure there are some examples of firms who have gone from the old school style of billing and have embraced the client's side of billing pricing. How long does that transition take? Is there any way to
Yeah,
kind of say, okay, you should expect, this many years, or
yeah.
it's a phased approach. What's that transition look like?
Yeah, look, I get that all the time, and I do understand that. And I think a couple of things. If I'm a startup firm, or two of us get together and whatever we're going to do, we're not going to bill by time. It's much easier starting fresh. And for the larger the firm, when you think about it, so much is built around time: our practice management system, our incentives, our rewards, or whatever. So that's not going to, Carthage is not going to be destroyed overnight. It is going to take, I think a lot depends on the leadership within the firm, how serious they are. And there are practical matters. We have contractual arrangements on billable hours with clients that don't expire for some period of time. So I do understand all that. Mostly with the firms, they pick a date, ahead. Lawyers are good if we've got a deadline. We're going to do it by January 2021, or whatever, and then work back. I have to say though, and this is anecdotally, Will, after working with firms for a number of years, if you spoke to any of those firms that have made the transition, they will tell you that if they had their time again, they would have turned off the timesheets or the time recording sooner than what they did, because once you get rid of that cuddy blanket, or you just have to be more creative, both on your pricing, but understanding the value you're providing to your clients. But and in some firms we work with, it works easier, quicker in some areas, partly because of the area of practice, but maybe because of the practice group leader. In others, it just takes time.
Are there any particular practice groups or practice areas that take longer to transition? Are there some practice groups where it's easier,
So interesting enough, yeah, the one that I get all the time is the litigators. The litigators say to me, I can see how you can do that in commercial or property, but you can't do it in litigation. Yeah. Some of the commercial and property partners tell me, I can see how you can do it in litigation, but look, pricing up front, or value-based pricing, or I don't like the term value-based pricing personally. I call it aligned pricing. Other firms call it agreed pricing, progressive pricing. But whatever, it's understanding that pricing is what you do before the work is done. Billing, is what happens after the work is done. So it's
surely all it would take is one big magic circle firm to say, okay, we're done with billable time, and then it would just sort of trickle down. Do you expect that to happen, or do you see it more from bottom up? Some of the smaller firms will start doing the clients.
So at the moment, it's been more bottom up. I agree with that. But any business model or pricing model change, tends to be from the bottom up and the smaller numbers and what have you. But some of those firms that, they just don't do bottom level work. They do some really high value work and compete with the global firms in work, even if they're small themselves. I admit that value-based pricing works better for experts than it does for generalists, if you like. Generalists, unfortunately, tend to have to meet the market, commoditise work. So I don't like that saying, because I think if you believe you're commoditised, then you'll price accordingly. And I think if you can distinguish between bottled water or different milk or toilet paper or whatever in pricing, then surely as professionals we can distinguish anything we do. But now we're seeing much more, and to the credit of global firms, they have always done some pricing that is not, whether it's success fees, contingency fees, some of those sorts of things, taking a risk and reward, sharing risk with their clients. But I have a view that I think you're right. Once one or two global firms do it, watch the rest of the dominoes fall. So I can't wait for that day. I happen to think, though, that it won't be in professional firms. It won't be the big global law firms that change first. I think it will be one of the big four. They're already doing very sophisticated pricing at the moment, and now that they're also encroaching more and more into the legal space, I'm seeing what I'm working with some of them and what they're doing with very strategic pricing.
Right. Well, John, I've written down a whole bunch of questions I want to ask you in the Q&A session. But before we get to that, thank you so much for your time today. If people want to contact you a little bit more about aligned pricing, what's the best way to get in touch?
So john.chisholm@innovim.com.au would be the best way. So, or Google me, I seem to come up, and you'll see that. But yeah, it was great. Thank you so much for having me on today. Happy pricing.
Thanks so much, John.